Yeah, my name is Beau Abdulla, and I founded Love People Not Pixels a little over 2 years ago in a response to the freedom and restoration I found in my own life from a 30-year sexual addiction. I seeing the survivor panel up here and telling those stories is profound. And my addiction to pornography that started at age 11 went beyond pornography. And we're going to touch on that a little later today. It's not something I wear proudly, but it's something that I'm not ashamed of anymore because I saw the root of it and I saw where it came, and I know there's hope and freedom. But as those were survivors up here, I'm a former buyer. And to sit here and say, to look at you and to say, I'm sorry. But the good news is there is freedom and hope. And I get to still wear this because of the amazing grace and forgiveness of my wife. And I still get to celebrate my birthdays with my kids and be a part of a family. So personally, I give honor and glory to God for that, freedom and redemption. So our mission as a group, Love People Not Pixels, we want to inspire a culture shift. That's a really big word, but a culture shift where individuals, families, and communities are making informed choices to reject pornography and defend one another from sexual exploitation. And you might be saying, wait a minute, I thought we were here for anti-trafficking. Wait, where's this porn thing coming up, right? You heard even from the start with Senator Cruz, what did he say? In a healthy world, we wouldn't be worrying about this. We talk about the stories of the average age of predominantly these girls being drawn into the trafficking business is 13, 12, 13, 14 years old. We talk about this ridiculous amount of need. So I ask the question, why? We should be really angry that our daughters are being recruited and groomed in our schools and churches. Why? Why is that happening? Why is it that these girls have to make $1,800 a night? Why is it that a girl can be worth $250,000 a year to these pimps? It's economics. They've said it themselves, it's all about the money. It's supply and demand, right? Why are there 14-year-old girls being recruited? Because there's a demand for 14-year-old girls. There's people in our society, and we've heard it, pastors, police officers, teachers. We sit with Houston police and Harris County sheriffs on stings arresting sex buyers. Guys, these are normal guys. These are normal guys, most of them married, who are the demand side of this. So we believe in our fight against human trafficking, if we can reduce the demand, we reduce the amount of girls being exploited. So that's our position in this. And this is that culture shift that we're trying to reach. This is what our youth is being told. All you need is hand. Times Square. Pornhub. 90% of teens talk about porn in either positive or neutral terms. 50% of teens think that viewing porn is less immoral than not recycling. So we do a great job on Green Earth, but nobody wants to talk about porn. The majority of teens think of porn as harmless and fun entertainment. There's an apathy around pornography. There's a lack of awareness. There's a lack of education. And I don't want to get into these stats because we can argue, but let's just say a lot of people are watching porn. Can we agree to that? Men, women, youth, and the average age of exposure, again, average there. So if we talk about the average age of girls being recruited into the sex trafficking business, the average age of exposure, that's average. We're talking about, there's a lot of 4, 5, 6-year-olds being exposed to pornography. And not a lot of people talking about it. But I'll remind you, it is no measure of health to be well adjusted to a profoundly sick society. Right? You don't know what you don't know. It's like asking a fish, what does water feel like? This is just who we are, right? Guys are supposed to think of sex every 8 seconds and want to hump everything that's moving around in the room. That's just how we're made, right? Are we? Are we made that way, or have we made ourselves that way? So did you know there's over 40 physical, psychological, emotional, social, and spiritual consequences that result just from viewing pornography? And have you educated yourselves on that? We're not going to go through these. I've got 20 minutes. I could literally speak for 8 hours. But I'll show you a place. Go to our website, LPNP.org, and under the Be Informed page, these are just 5 quick videos. But if you want to just start getting informed to those psychological, physical, social, and spiritual consequences, that's a place for you to go. But I do want to talk about one. Porn is highly addictive, and your brain and body are impacted by it just like a drug. Quick show of hands, how many of you understand this concept? About half the room. So let's do this in real layman's terms, especially most of you guys are parents, and I want you guys to be able to go back and talk to your kids about this. We can do a real high-level scientific talk on this, but that's not the way your kids talk. So how many of you have heard of dopamine? Anyone, real quick, what is dopamine as a neurotransmitter? What is the main purpose, or what is dopamine? Makes you feel good, right? It's a pleasure receptor. It's actually part of our reward cycle mechanism that our brains and our bodies utilize. When you do something that is pleasurable and good, and your body and your brain rewards yourself, and there's a dopamine flush. Part of that dopamine flush is a euphoric, good feeling, but it also connects that, oh, that thing that you just did that released this, I like that, okay? Now, the amount of dopamine that gets released at a sexual experience is the same as an opioid drug. Very high. I don't need to tell this room. It's pleasurable and it feels good. But here's the deal. Think of a field. Think of grass. There's no trail in it. There's nothing. And as people, and I used to be a part of my story too, I used to work for Living Water International. I was a country director in Uganda, bringing water into rural countries. And we'd see this. We'd put these water wells in these communities, and we'd go back and we'd stay connected. And a year later, wow, there were these like really cool footpaths that weren't there before, because now we put something new and the community started making their way, and it tramples on it. It makes lines, and it makes the easy path. So if I'm going to come and get water, I'm not going to go through the brush, right? I'm going to take the path of least resistance, and I'm going to follow the path that everyone else made. And it starts creating. Well, the same thing happens with the dopamine flush. As it goes and it starts stimulating your sexual response, and we have to acknowledge this, that when we view pornography, that's what we're doing. And we're training our body to react and be sexually responsive in certain ways. It's the same thing. So think of that line. It's the same thing in your brain. You're creating these easy pathways. But just like a drug, there's resistance. And what's once made you feel a certain pleasure, now it doesn't do it anymore. So what do? Just like a drug, just like alcohol, you go to more, you go to different things to stimulate the same way, which is why it's everybody's story. Nobody in the world watches the same porn clip for 20 years. Doesn't happen because it doesn't do it anymore. You watch something else, you watch something newer, you watch something more perverse. I talked about the why. Why is there a market for 14-year-old girls? Is it any coincidence that teen is the most searched genre for porn? So we're connecting our sexual experience and what we're seeing with what we really want to experience in our sexual lives. So this is happening, and it creates a need to continue that cycle. But let's just not talk about dopamine. So dopamine's the pleasure drug. Who's heard of oxytocin? What's oxytocin do? Huh? It's the bonding chemical, right? So when moms hold their babies, little oxytocin's released. When you're holding hands with somebody, oxytocin's released. Sex and the sexual experience made to be in a relational experience there's supposed to be a bonding mechanism that happens. But again, your body doesn't know the difference if you're looking at a screen or with a real person. So now take Johnny or Susie, 12 years old, and and we didn't go out again, watch the video, social anxiety, depression, poor body image, low self-esteem, you name it. And now we got all these kids watching all this porn in their rooms by themselves. They can't even hold hands with each other, let alone talk. And I've stimulated my sexual response 1,000, 2,000, 3,000, 4,000 times to a screen. And each time that screen has flushed dopamine and a bonding chemical of oxytocin. Guys, we are chemically, sexually bonded to our phones. You talk about when we take them away. Sexually bonded to screens. So all of this stuff, though, isn't necessarily enough to get somebody to stop. But the reason we wanted to pause on this is because as a room mainly of parents, while there's a lot of other things, and we're going to invite you in a place to continue with us and learn, this is a base part of empathy that you've got to get. So if you do realize that your child maybe has already been looking at porn for a year, 2 years, 3 years, there's a chemical, physiochemical dependency, behavioral connection to that choice. You can't just say stop without support. Would you say that to an alcoholic? Does anyone here think that's a good plan? No support, no plan, no care. What's your problem? You've been drinking for 4 years, just stop? Ridiculous. Why do we expect porn addicts to do the same thing? So I invite you to watch those Be Informed videos and learn more about this. Jeffrey Satinover said it like this: "It is though we have devised a form of heroin 100 times more powerful than before, usable in the privacy of our own home, and injected directly into the brain through the eyes. It is now available in unlimited supply via a self-replicating distribution network. It's glorified as art and protected by the First Amendment." And I wish Senator Cruz was still here. Is Senator Huffman here? Who knows her? Okay, can you please pass this message around? Protected by the First Amendment? Possibly, and we have to watch our language here. Don't ever go out and say porn is illegal. Pornography is not illegal. Obscene materials, which the Supreme Court already defined in Miller versus California in 1973, are illegal. And the vast majority of the porn that we are exposed to and being distributed would fall under the category of being classified as obscene. We already have these laws. As Mr. Cruz said, laws without enforcement are useless. Trying to enforce something without a law is useless. In this problem, we have the law. We have no politicians or no legislative arm that's willing to stand up and actually start enforcing this. This is one area that we're going to be pushing forward in the next legislative session with the Texas state, and there's also some work being done on the federal level. So we're going to invite you guys in to getting connected with Love People Not Pixels, and if the advocacy legislation side interests you, just kind of put that in a parking lot and connect with us. So that's a real brief, that's 10 minutes of the problem with porn. But how is it connected to sex trafficking? Why are we here at this conference? Ultimately, porn is a relationship killer, right? When you take those 40 consequences, ultimately what it does is it destroys relationships. Now, this is a loaded question. And before we go on with this, I will say the number one reason, and this is for men, the number one reason young males voluntarily give up porn is ED. Let's clarify, PIED, porn-induced erectile dysfunction. And it's not just for our boys to know. Every woman and girl in this room needs to know about PIED. Every urologist who a male under 40 who comes in with erectile dysfunction should be asking, how much porn do you watch? I'm not saying that there's not nerve-related or vascular-related, circulation. I'm not saying those other forms of ED don't exist, and if they do, fine. But the measure to which our young men which now is over 33% if you go by a U.S. Navy study. 33% of men under 30 have some form of ED. Whereas in 1997, it was 7%. Okay? And if you don't want to believe a U.S. Navy stat, listen to the ads for the men's fertility, or men's whatever they're called on sports radio. They have this young girl's voice, young woman's voice selling it. It's always that, right? Viagra, it's a young woman selling Viagra. They're not even selling it by guys, it's the women. And her stat is 50% of men suffer from some form of ED. Why? Why? But this is when we talk about that dopamine flush, and it fries your sexual response. That dopamine flush is so bright, the biggest sex organ in your body is your brain. And it absolutely destroys it and fries it, so it can't function. So when this is happening to our young men and they realize this, it's a big motivation to get porn out of their lives. But any woman that should be the first thing too. If your 26-year-old boyfriend or husband is having ED, you should be thinking porn. Period. I don't care if I'm outing guys. Right? Take my man card away. You can't say that. That's a real deal, and every woman needs to know it. But I'm not talking about erectile dysfunction here. Actually, before I move on, I want to make sure I say one thing. Because if I left the brain conversation where I just left it, it would be really sad and disappointing. It'd be a big bummer. But the reality is our brains, because of neuroplasticity, have the power to regenerate and heal. And that's the good news. So if you get that stimulation out of your life, your neurotransmittal pathways can restore, right? And that's the good news. So you're not bent on those paths once you've done them. You can actually restore from them. But with this ED, what I'm talking about is the escalation dynamic, because the question was, how does porn relate to human trafficking? You look at this stair step, softcore porn to hardcore porn to webcam to strip clubs to massage to solicitation and prostitution. Now, number one, not everyone's going to follow this stair step exactly. Number two, not everybody, pretty much everybody who starts with softcore porn will move to hardcore porn. I'll say that. But I get not everyone's going to continue down this step. I talked about those stings we do with police. I haven't met one man who's arrested for buying another human being that doesn't have porn in their life, I'll tell you that. But I want you to think about a few things here. It's all thought of. It's all planned. These companies, and Kelly showed this stat before, 1 in 5 men in Houston. It's all planned. No one likes being a sucker. You're all suckers when you click on that free porn link, that chat now, that talk to me. They'll give you it for free. Why do you think they'll give it to you for free? Because they got a hook in you, and they know. And when you got the amount of clicks, whatever it is, 80 million a day, even if they get 0.1%, that's a lot of money. And that's a lot of people going down that road. So we have to be sad. We have to be aware. But they're going to take you down this path. But we're not here today just to talk about this. I'm here today to invoke what may be a message that you may not agree with, or maybe a new one. If we look at this, let's take the pimp, and let's even understand that the pimp, whether it's male or female, probably has a lot bigger organization behind him or her, and sometimes there's the mom and pops, the little independents, that's fine, but you've got the pimp. Let's talk about you got a group of buyers, and you've got the exploited, which I also understand is more than one. Pretty much everybody in this room says no. No, no, no. That is a terrible picture. That is an awful picture. And while I don't know what to do about it and I'd be scared, I don't want anything to do with that. And hopefully we'll have champions who will learn what to do and be able to call it out, and that's fantastic. You got an exploiter, you got a buyer, customer, and you've got someone who's exploited. So why is it that when we add a camera into this equation, all of a sudden it's okay? I just shouldn't get in other people's business. What they do in their own home is okay, right? That's getting a little too judgmental, that's not, no. Pornography is filmed prostitution. Make no mistake about it. And so, the point here is, I don't care if you're staying here. It's not about, let's make sure you don't go up to here and then we're really fighting human trafficking. You got to understand, you all came here to learn. I'm not going to point people out. There's people in this room who are part of the human trafficking problem. Because I guarantee there's people in this room who watch porn. If you're against human sex trafficking, you can't be apathetic, neutral, or supportive of pornography. This is the new position I wanted to give. This is the idea of this room. It's contradictory. It's hypocritical. And let's go further. If you watch porn, free or paid, you are a direct contributor to the business of human sex trafficking. That's harder to clap for. Woo! I'm not here to, like I said, we're not putting hands up. This is something that people have to pierce their own hearts with. So our call is to defend love. We work in 3 areas. Awareness, you don't know what you don't know. So we have parts of our program that we call Be Informed. Okay? Be Informed is learn. It's some of those videos, but we have 3-part parenting series. How do you address this in your home? We want to help equip you. Go out to the table. If you're part of a school, if you're part of a church, I don't care if you just want to get 7 or 10 other people together and we'll come to your living room. We will do a 3-part training on setting up the foundation of what our kids face, because we think we know. We don't know. Then how to actually talk to them about it, and then media literacy and setting up tech plans in your home. I talk about some of the technology, but go way deeper than that. So we want to equip parents in our Be Informed. We do a much longer presentation, more in depth, about connecting human trafficking, pornography to the demand for human trafficking. We can do that for your community. We have a specific short presentation for youth, 7th grade through 12th grade. We like to separate boys and girls, called You Are What You Watch. But that's just getting the information out there. From there, we call you to get engaged with LPNP. And those are our defender trainings. Also, I mentioned the police ops. If you want to get trained to be on those police ops, we'll have those. We actually have the defender trainings are free. We do them the 3rd Saturday of every month. In fact, we have one next Saturday, a week from today. They're 3 hours long. You can sign up. You can get information at the table. Come visit us. Come to a defender training. So I am calling you to become a defender as mainly a room of parents. You are a defender in that specific way. There's 14 different ways to defend love. But if you're talking about protecting and raising children that will not become future buyers and lessen the demand, you are a defender. So what is a defender? A defender is someone who intentionally strives not to be influenced by our hyper-sexualized culture, makes a decision to reject pornography in their own life, inspires others to reject pornography, and defends others from sexual exploitation. You heard this thing about, there's more Starbucks, or there's more spas than Starbucks in Houston. In fact, it's 4-1. Well, you know what? There's 4-1 churches than spas. Right? So who's got the power and who's doing anything about it? You join us, defend love in your community. There's 2 spas within 1.5 miles of my house. That's my community. I'm going to do everything I can to get those guys shut down. But I can't, right? Now, who's in your community? Who's 1 mile from your church doors? And you're going to defend others from sexual exploitation? And there's 8, 10, 12, 16 girls behind those black windows. Let's do something. So are you called to be a defender? Do you want to get trained to be a defender? Are you already a defender? Do you want to connect with other defenders? You need to come speak with us. You need to get connected with us. Do you need to get equipped? Does this idea of having real conversations about sex and sexuality and pornography with your children scare you and you don't know where to start? Connect with us. We want to help you get there. So I want to end with this. Visit us at our table. Here's our contact information. Facebook and Instagram are our major social medias right now at Love People Not Pixels. And I know this was short, this wasn't a lot of time, but we want to connect with each and every one of you. We want to help you defend love where you're called to do it, first in your life, then in your family, and then in your community. Thank you.